There we go. Now we're recording, so you're going to have to do it again. But actually, I'm going to give you a suggestion, and then I want you to do it again. Okay?
Terrific.
So here's the suggestion. In the last month or so, when we've been talking about magnitude, we kind of got beyond the place where it was kind of this binary, it's either heavy or it's light. And we started talking more about ski snow interaction and engagement to the degree that there is this force coming from the snow that starts to change the skier's trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So rather than saying, here's a challenge for you, rather than phrasing it as the skis are heavy and the skis are light, at which point is there enough magnitude that it starts to effectively, that the skier is lined up to effectively take that magnitude and let it change their direction, their trajectory, which is kind of the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, then tie it into those two skills. And then when you present your outcome, make sure that both your real and your ideal are to some degree, there should be kind of, there's a mention of the real, this is where he is, and then the ideal, obviously that's the prescription, and that your learning outcome is going to be maybe the one thing that's going to help them get from the real to the ideal. And, I know I'm giving you a whole lot, aren't I? And then, but it's basically what you just did. I'm just putting a few parameters to it. Yep. When you pull your task out, make sure that it's speaking of the interrelationship of the two skills, and speak to how it's going to meet that learning outcome. Because if the learning outcome is getting them from the real to the ideal, then that's your key as to how you're going to use a task.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'd like more coaching on in terms of verbiage, because like I feel like in my mind I'm going through that whole process, but then outwardly I'd like to be better.
Yeah, and that's just, Chris, that's just practice being in front of a group and verbalizing something over and over and over again. But we can practice it here. You can lay it out, and then Andrew's going to listen, and you've already done a good one. Now you're going to do a better one, and then Andrew's going to come in, and if there's any just little tightening up, he's going to, right, so we'll do a good, better, best, and then we'll reverse the order.
One of the things, though, before I jump into that, though, is I'd like to get a little more clarity on the language of tip versus tail displacement. When we were watching the short swing turns, we saw people, and that goes to your point of like, when's the magnitude of pressure actually happening in a way that changes trajectory or changes direction. And what I saw was that Jonathan's tail was being displaced from the tip, but he was doing it for a shorter duration at a quicker rate earlier in the turn than everybody. And it was like, it's sort of like he's on the edge, so it's not just a pivoting of the ski, but it's like a drift, and then a slide. And I don't know how to say that phenomena of what I'm observing in a way that sticks to the skill pool of foot to foot and edging.
So rather than just,
craft, right?
Rather than just kind of do it, philosophically in our brain, let's maybe pick one or two skiers from here and speak to if there's a place where the tail doesn't follow the tip, which to me would speak of maybe some rotary ski performance or some pressure control ski performance. And then if you're speaking about it relative to magnitude, there's probably going to be, some variations there. So let's see what we see.
Okay.
Right. So maybe pick one or two skiers here in particular, or you can speak to the whole group and the tendency of the group.
I felt like the whole group's kind of doing that thing. So we can just kind of look at that first skier.
Okay.
And what I'm seeing is that the magnitude's greatest after the fall line. I'm seeing the edges highest after the fall line. and I'm seeing pressure being directed to that outside foot after the fall line. And everything's happening very rapidly. And that's allowing the skier's body to travel downhill without being displaced too much sideways across the hill.
Okay.
But the timing of that ski moving away from the body, or as the skier's inclinating and the skier's moving their body inside the turn, the skis are moving away from the body, and it's not until after the fall line that the body and the skis are aligned in a way that creates direction change. And what I'd like to see is that the skier is using more lower body tipping movements or lower leg tipping earlier in the turn to create earlier edge engagement while they're directing pressure to the outside ski. And the task that I would like to play with to create that experience for the skier is through skating, and change the understanding of not just putting a ski on edge, but putting a ski on edge with the purpose of making it bend, and getting a skier to have a body awareness of aligning their center of mass to the base of support, or aligning their body to their skis in a way.
Okay. Stop there for just a second.
Yep.
What you just said, that you want the skier to change their understanding of the purpose of the edging is not just to edge the ski, but to make the ski bend. That's your learning outcome. That was awesome, right? Are you clear on that? I mean, you're clear about how important that statement is?
That's why I said.
Okay, good. No, I mean, that to me, I really picked up on. That was crystal clear. And that, you guys, that's gold. I mean, when you have a really, really good learning outcome, that way, when you go into your task, you just keep telling yourself, it's about the learning outcome, it's about the learning outcome, it's about the learning outcome. Okay, cool. Now, how are you going to use the task to help them achieve through an experience, achieve the understanding that you've laid out in that learning outcome? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if you were aware of that. I caught on to what you were trying to get me to catch on to.
That's good. That's the good part. Because I mean, that was definitely my intention. So I'm glad I communicated that. And I think that the observable behavior of seeing that through skating is seeing a body track with the ski as they're pushing off. So the body's not just going forward, but it's moving with the ski and it's tracking with the ski. And the other ski performance is that you actually start to see the ski bend and then the tip move downhill or move towards the direction of travel. Like it's, when we were talking about, I'm just going to try to show this visually, Jen, with my hand. Where we were talking about getting the arc to go this way, so that the force is pushing on the ski that way. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's creating the bend. And if we can get the body in an athletic enough position where the lower body is actively making those movements, we can create that ski performance.
Good.
And then bring that short radius turn.
Good. So what I'm hearing so far is that in order for the learning to reach the learning outcome of changing the skier's understanding of that the purpose of the edging is to make the ski bend, not just to make it edge. Okay. I think I'm trying to repeat back based on my notes, and that using skating, pulling a task out, skating, so that they're tracking and moving with the ski, so that the ski bends and the tip of the ski starts to pull down the hill, and I'm just missing. So I've got ski to ski pressure control, What's the other skill you're bringing in there?
Edging
Ah,
and having lower leg tipping to
ah,
create that edge and
there
not
you go.
just inclinating the whole body.
There you go. There you go. Right. So when you're putting that together in your mind, or as you're even presenting it to the group, or as you're leading them through it, that the first part of this is when they're skating is that they're balancing over and actually tracking with the ski, so that hopefully with some flexion in their body, so that they can tip the ski underneath them without falling off of it, so that the ski can interact with the snow, i.e. bend, and the resulting magnitude starts to change their direction. Beautiful. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. That was the only piece I was missing, was just that it's like we're bringing those two skills together in a very simple application through skating. It was just missing that one piece. Cool. So Andrew, do you want to, so sorry, I got so excited. I just caught all these really good things he was doing and pointed them out to them. And actually I was supposed to let you do that. I'm sorry. So we can either keep going with good, better, best, and you can take a shot at the same thing, or do you want to look at this same group of people and say, boy, I totally appreciate what you did, but this is the direction I would go. Let's do that.
I appreciate the direction you were going, but what I would have done, I'm going to kill my video here because it seems to lock up. I once had this trainer.
Uh-oh, Andrew, we heard you once had a trainer, but we're not hearing you anymore.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
We know that you once had a trainer, but that's all, and we're dying to hear the rest.
His name was TJ Metz. I can relate to this issue, going through this as a very quick rotation aspects at the start of the turn. I would still focus on ski to ski pressure and edging, because the quick rotation is a result in my mind. And how to solve that, because as you saw, or Chris diagnosed earlier, that like they're having a very quick rotation at the start of the turn, and then all their magnitude comes up in the finish. So I would approach this as an edging and ski to ski issue as well. What I would change is the task, and I would go more, my trainer taught me this, is go on more of a patience turn / garland progressiveness, progression. So start out across the hill and getting our skis to tip simultaneously under a stable upper body, and get that feeling of both skis releasing at the same time with a heavy focus on the start of the turn, the initiation of the turn. So with that, we can start to feel the skis bend and shape at the initiation part of the turn, not just, if you see the first skier, his tails are coming up off the ground and washing out. So from this, we get to feel the edges start to build magnitude earlier in the turn, so that we don't have to feel all the magnitude at the finish phase of the turn. We can start to create that sensation of using our edges to create the turn and create the bend of the ski design. So garland style turns across the hill both ways, and then we can carry that into short turns, but this is where the patience turn comes in. Before you start your turn, hang out in the transition period after finish, before initiation. Wait a second, and then go like we were just doing with the garlands, and tip your skis at the same time. The focus here is to really drive home the sensation of bending the ski early in the turn. Because if what they're trying to do is a short performance turn, that's the task, they're not achieving the symmetry of it. So we need to feel that sensation, the initiation part of the turn. That would be the direction that I bring my lesson.
So backing up,
Mhm.
And I
Yeah, I was just wondering.
agree. I agree with what you're saying. You know, sometimes when I watch skiers in this situation, what strikes me, especially some of the latter skiers in the group, is I think that sometimes there's this perception that you've got to get to a high edge really fast. And in our attempt to get to a high edge really fast, we end up moving the ski away from us, as opposed to a low edge early. A low edge early isn't necessarily the same thing as a high edge fast. In fact, they're quite opposite. And so what I hear you saying is, through an experiential setting of a garland that's going across the hill, get them to, you know, in that patience and that real slowness, you know, how getting them to feel that they need to get the edge to engage early so that there can be the ski snow interaction that starts to change their direction. Okay. So what's your learning outcome? What is it that you're wanting them to take away from that experience?
I'm gonna kill the video again. The learning outcome is to figure out how our edges are viable throughout the entirety of the turn and how it affects the bending of the ski.
Okay.
Because it's something I've been struggling with as well. That's why I can relate to a lot of these skiers, is we don't get that edge gripped in there early enough to create that bend, to create the shape that we want.
Okay. So yes. So here's what I'm going to suggest: that the edges are viable through the whole turn. That's too broad, and you already narrowed it up. That how important it is to have the edge engagement early in the turn. And then the other suggestion, or the thing, because you're going to have them go slowly, it's very difficult to have a high edge and go slowly. So is this also going to deal with not only the timing aspect of this, but the intensity aspect of it? In other words, how much edge?
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Again, it's going back to personal experience. I needed to feel this. I needed to feel starting slow. I can't just go straight into like mocking down the run, because then I think that's too much force for people to deal with. It clearly is. So we need to start somewhere slow. It's going to be low intensity. And then once we get the process of feeling the edges going up together and starting to shape that turn a lot more, we can ramp up the intensity, change the environment, kind of go anywhere from that. But
Okay.
these people are not getting the top part of their turn.
Okay. Let me repeat back to you what I'm hearing is that you're going to focus more on the beginning of the turn. You had to feel it, and especially feel how, what keeps coming to my mind and what I'm interpreting, and it's kind of what I said earlier, is less edge, earlier, slower, especially at the beginning of the turn. So however you would want to see what I'm doing is I'm going to get you to kind of laser focus your learning outcome. In other words, if you've got a task or a tactic or a blend, or however it is that you're going to bring them into this, if you can, the more you can, because it's 10, 15, 20 minutes in terms of how we're presenting it, and to keep you on track as well as them on track, if you can get it to, you know, a phase to phase, a skill to skill. And I love if you can bring in intensity, duration, rate, timing.
They should really come up with an acronym for that.
Well, I call it dirt. My husband calls it turd. Right? So just lasering it. Okay.
Yeah, I have a tendency to just spit out my thoughts for a little bit and then.
You guys are right on track. Our tendency, I think what's really cool about what we're doing here is we're getting clearer and clearer. I remember the first time I was suggesting to you guys, you know, a 10 or 15 minute learning outcome, it was like, whoa. And now as it's getting more and more specific, and it's like, okay, I'm reverse engineering this. I'm backing into it. I'm going, okay, well, they're doing this, and I know I want them to be doing that. And I know this task is going to work. And then the learning outcome is why. Why is that task going to work? Or how is that task going to work? Or what exactly do you want them to be able to take away from that task that's going to get them from their real closer to their ideal? So whether you come up with the learning outcome first and pick the task, or whether you get the task and then you figure out, now, how do I want to use this task, right? Because we can use a task in a gazillion different ways. And then that's your learning outcome. And that way you can stand in front of that group and go, look, I know we've only got a few minutes here, but gosh dang, if you guys, if I can get you to feel how little edge it takes while your body is organized just right in order for the ski snow interaction to happen, then you're not going to feel like you've got to do so much and be so heavy and overwork the skis at the beginning of the turn and actually not get anything out of them. Because that's kind of what happens in short radius turns.
Can I try a learning outcome real quick?
Yes, please. Go for it.
So my learning outcome for this group would be twofold. I want to change their understanding about the top of the turn, or the initiation phase.
He always leaves us hanging.
I know.
I was like, oh man, that's gonna be the greatest learning outcome of all time.
We'll let his internet catch up. You there, Andrew?
Yes.
There he is. Okay.
I don't know why my internet is terrible.
Mine does the same thing. So let's see. We heard that it was about that you wanted them to pay attention to or learn more about the initiation phase, the first part of the turn.
Yes. I would like to change their understanding and their performance. The performance would be just more of a bonus outcome and a way to observe it.
What specifically would you like to change about their understanding and their performance in the first phase of the turn?
I would like them to, I'd like to change their understanding about how edges can shape the top of the turn. Right now, they are very focused on a high edge angle at the finish phase of the turn. And we need to back that up and show them how it can relate to the bending of the ski and shaping of the turn, not just a finish phase of the turn to get to the next one.
Okay. So how their edge, where they're using most of it at the finish of the turn, that if they brought it into the beginning of the turn, is going to help them bend the ski through and then you can even just say through a variety of speeds and amplitudes. It's like, do you need a lot of edge in going fast? Do you need a little edge in going slow?
Yes.
There you go. There you go. That's a cool learning outcome. That's a cool learning outcome. And it's like, I was hearing you, that's what I was hearing you explain when you were explaining the task. And so I think because we tend to be very concrete in saying, I got to do this task and I got to do it in this way. And this is what I'm trying to get them to feel, right? It's like we kind of have that experience built inside of us and we're trying to express it to them. And then it's just a matter of wordsmithing that into our learning outcome. And that's, once again, that's just practice.
My second kind of bonus one would just be the physical side of it and see if we could start to do it just with like those garlands or patience turns.
Okay.
That'd be observable.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know why whenever I start talking with the video go, it just cuts out everything, but yeah.
Bandwidth.
Video. Yeah.
No, that's bandwidth. No, that was good. That was really good. So I'm going to back up and answer. Let's make sure that we kind of talk a little bit about, Chris, what your question was, because I know you got to go soon. You were asking about a ski where the tail, here's my ski, right here's my little pen, that when the tail overcomes the tip, or it doesn't follow the tracking of the tip. Well, in order for the tail to follow the tip, there needs to be enough of a shelf built in the snow that the ski is bending and the tip is leading and the tail is following. In other words, there's got to be that ski snow interaction to some degree. And if there isn't that ski snow interaction, then there either isn't enough edge, or the ski is too light, it's been unweighted, or perhaps the pressure is too far forward, or perhaps the pivot point is too far forward. And it's usually some combination of all of those. And if all
So,
of those things are happening, there's no magnitude, because the
right.
ski is tracking, the ski is doing this, it's spinning versus bending and tracking.
So if I'm trying to talk about that phenomena, I need to talk about a centered pressure point and a ski on edge. If I start talking about a forward pressure point, though, does that move me out of a foot-to-foot pressure control realm? Like if I'm working with like a level 2, you know, or something like that, and I'm having to be extra careful about my verbiage, but I want to explain that skier, like that kind of thing that I'm happening, but I want to stay within foot to foot, and I want to stay within the
Oops, Andrew, he left us hanging, didn't he?
edging realm.
There he is. You dropped off for a second. I think that remember a couple weeks ago we were talking about when you're talking about somebody's initial movement pattern, it's okay to talk about more than 2 skills in that initial movement pattern. If you follow that up with prioritizing down to the 2 fundamentals that you're going to focus on. So, you know, let's say like when I'm looking at these skiers, I think it's when you start to get down to the 3rd or 4th skier, there's quite a bit of tail displacement. And that tail displacement early in the turn tells me that the pressure's forward. There's, you know, some type of rotary mechanism going on that's making the ski turn around the front of the ski as well. And that when a ski is, you know, and as well as it's fairly light, in other words, there was an extension movement of the skier. And as long as those 3 things are happening, that it's light, it's pivoting around the front, the pressure is forward, that there's probably very little edge and very little magnitude.
Yeah.
So in order to have, so hold on. So in order to have more edge and magnitude earlier in the turn, or more edge and ski to ski earlier in the turn, which is going to result in more magnitude, that's where I would take the focus, right? I mean, there's 5 fundamentals, and all 5 are interacting all the time. And sometimes, you know, when I watch some of these skiers, it's what my own little phraseology. I call it skills segregation as opposed to skills blending. It's light, and then it's twisted, and then it's edged, and then it's heavy. And I'd like to have all of them working together, but I might kind of flip-flop and make some of the things at the end of the turn happen a little more at the beginning of the turn, which is what you said, Andrew. But see how I would maybe tie that together?
Yeah. And also sort of talking about that, like if you're really trying to just stay within in that realm of foot to foot and edging, you could talk about that there's a low edge, or that and also that the center, the pressure point isn't in the center. Sorry, my brain's like slow right now.
Well, if you're gonna go ski to ski, then don't become overly obsessed with the ski with the pressure in the center, because that's fore aft.
So you just say that it's not directed to the outside ski until it is?
Yeah, you know, I left out that piece. So if I was going to bring in all 5, I would say that there's a, you know, and I'm watching one of the skiers, and I might say that there's an extension up at the beginning of the turn as the skier quickly pressures the outside ski, but he's not doing it in a way that he actually gets to balance and move with the ski, kind of falls off of it. So the skis stay light. He moves forward at the same time. The skis, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things going on.
I'm just trying to think in my head, if I'm leading a level 2 MA session, and we're looking at a skier,
okay,
and the task is, you know, I want you to describe the skier using foot to foot and edging movements, and you have to stay in those lanes. But it's these skiers, you know, they're doing this thing.
Then I wouldn't go. Andrew, you've done quite a bit of level 2 MA with those groups, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Chris was at a bunch of them as well.
Good,
Yeah.
good. So how do you guys deal with that? With, let's say you're looking at footage similar to this.
I'd start off with some parameters as well,
Okay.
and understanding our audience of level twos is just we can't. Obviously, they all blend together, but if our goal is to teach them about skills and like further their education of this is what this skill does, and then slightly relate to it, we can only do like 1.5 skills at a time, sometimes two. It's you need to be very clear about this skill, not what we'd fix or anything like that. I've had issues come up like, well, one of the trainees said I would go with pressure on this, and I said I completely agree, but that's not what we're doing right now. We're trying to get a better understanding of edging, of rotary, of whatever.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out. Like, how do you, like, do you just say like that the person's more on the inside foot than the outside foot at the start of the turn and then it switches? Like, even is it that they're on their inside foot and that's why that the tail is displacing? Like, I know it has more to do with fore aft balance and rotation and all that, but within that setting, when I'm trying to help them just within that skill, I notice in myself that my language is limited. Like, I want to switch to a fore aft thing, and I'm trying to be more disciplined.
You just have to stick with like the same word choices of ski to ski or foot to foot pressure of what affects the skis or which ski is bending. We're not talking about fore aft, just which ski is bending, and then body performance.
Yep.
What affects that?
Yep.
And no matter, like, you can explain that there is a lot of other stuff going on. Of course, there's rotary and edging and fore aft. We are sticking with this, and answer questions and how it relates, but that's getting beyond us.
So here's a thought, because it's not that at level 2 they can't talk about all 5 of the fundamentals. They just can't talk about all 5 of the fundamentals at the same time, which is the hard
very
part.
Overwhelming.
Huh?
That's very overwhelming.
Oh yeah. So sometimes what I've done, and it might not be at some of the earlier sessions when we're just getting the hang of it, but sometimes, I'll divide the group into 3 groups or into 4 groups. And especially if I've got another trainer, and if I've got another trainer who's like, I really want to talk about fore aft, it's like, perfect. Then you're going to talk about fore aft with those 4 people. And I'm going to talk about rotary with these 4 people. And Chris is going to talk about edging with these 4 people. And Andrew's going to talk about ski to ski with these 4 people. And in 20 minutes, we're going to come back together. We're going to each make presentations back to the big group. And then as a big group, we're going to figure out magnitude. Why not? Why not hit all of them? But hit all of them. And here's the skill sets that quite often I see missing when folks come to level 3 is they're not comfortable with staying. It's not just about staying with one skill. It's about taking that skill through all of the phases of a turn over and over and over again. They're really good about going initiation to shaping, initiation to shaping. It's like, yeah, well, what about shaping to finish? And then what about finish back into initiation, right? And we see that a lot among our peers, is that we're so quick to go skill to skill. And we forget about sometimes there's just some brilliant and simple and wonderful performance gaps that we could fill, i.e. prescriptions for change, that are just about staying in one skill phase to phase. And that's what it's helping these guys really get good at.
Cool. So maybe may I try to see if I'm getting this? Andrew, would you say that in describing these skiers that we've been observing, that at the top of the turn, pressure is not being directed to the outside ski, therefore there isn't much ski bend, and the edge angle is also relatively low. And as the skier moves through the fall line into the finish phase, the edge angle is increasing and pressure is abruptly directed to the outside ski, and there's a great amount of pressure on the outside ski. Like,
it just seems like you're going through 2 skills. All right, so what's your audience?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just do this, trying to explain it only through foot to foot and edging. Even though like when I initially started this call, I was like, the thing that my eye was drawn to was a tail displacement. And as we just discussed, like that has a lot to do with 4/2 stuff and rotary stuff. But if I'm really trying to be disciplined and I'm really trying to talk about my learning outcome of getting a ski to bend sooner in the turn and not just be edged, but edged and bending, that would be a way of doing it, saying that the ski doesn't have much bend and has an edge, and then the bend increases as the skier leaves the fall line.
My critique on that, like you kept them separate pretty well, but if this was to a level 2 group, I would say break it up even more and go edging. Here's how this edging is happening. It's not it's a very low edge angle in the initiation, and then a very high edge angle, and it progressively gets higher, and with the highest edge angle in the finish. How they're doing that is now body performance. Are they leg tipping or creating angles, or is it inclination? And then I would move into the second skill. I would make sure they understand
Okay.
performance, body performance, ideal. And then here's what I'm tracking also is a pressure.
Awesome. That really helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very much so. And I like the way you presented that, Andrew, in that, and you might, let's say you guys are in front of this room, right? Let's say you guys are in front of this room working it together. Chris, you might step in there and you know, sometimes it's fun to put the footage up, and Andrew, you know, you take a shot at it. Well, this is what I'm seeing. And Chris, you take a shot at it. Well, this is what I'm seeing. And you might talk about the interaction of those two skills and then say, oh, but wait a minute, you guys are level 2. You need to have one primary skill with a light tracking of a secondary. So that's
so in depth to this phone call that I realize I got.
You are really late, and you got hungry people, and you need to get them to dinner. So good job tonight, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you guys so much.
Okay.
Talk to
Bye. I was going to say your family's hungry. You were listening to me.
I gotta go.
Bye.
Bye.
That's hilarious. Okay. Excellent. No, Andrew, you did a great job. I like hearing how you are very clear on what's important to and how to prioritize and focus and stay disciplined in your own presentation for level 2. And I think that's it's really hard to do initially. And you know, I think that's good information for Chris, because I think for each of us, we look at a skier and it's like, oh, there's my bias is showing.
And if we're trying to learn about, I mean, we don't know where their knowledge is, so we need to go through every skill and how it relates, and just exactly the format that was set out is ski performance, body performance, real versus ideal. And then just so they start to get the vocab. That's what I noticed most about running those level 2s was just the vocab isn't there. They might be able to observe something, they just don't know how to explain it. So starting that year out with getting the vocab and then showing how it works from task to task.
Agreed. Good. What would you like to do with the rest of our time?
I don't know. I kind of been hit or miss with these Zoom calls, but now I should be able to make as many as I can now because October's hit, so work is slowed down.
Right.
But for tonight, I have no idea. I'm pretty good with that. If you want to take a break and have it a short week.
Sure. And then I'll be back again next week. And then the week after, I'll be back next week, but then the week after, so in the 15, 16, anyway, I might have some conflicts after that. So we'll definitely do next week. And then I may have 2 weeks off before we meet again. So.
Okay.
All right. Well, good job tonight. Way to go. So what are you taking away from tonight? What's kind of the primary thing that you're hearing and that you're going to take into your focus?
Oh, that I got to start ramping up my knowledge again and become, especially with this, I've got a ski performance this year and clinic. and I have to be very clear about my learning outcomes. I need
Okay.
those more dialed in.
Okay.
I can talk about other things and tasks and whatever else and branch off, but I need to get a clear outcome and like spot on and fast.
So here's a thought. You know how, like when you were suggesting how you're training movement analysis for level 2, and it's very linear. There's like a very specific formula. And when you're suggesting that, it's essentially aligned with like the level 2 assessment. And when someone then moves on to level 3, where we don't have as structured a movement analysis assessment, it's really just there are some skill sets and a level of knowledge that I need to hear, but somebody gets to take themselves through whatever process they want, right? And because of that, what I've found myself moving towards and how I've been coaching people a lot in the last trainees in the last handful of years is kind of start to pay attention to the inner process. And I know when I watch a skier, definitely I kind of see the big picture, and the first thing I do is it's almost like I'm running side by side. Here's what they're doing, here's what they should be doing. In other words, I'm kind of in my own mind doing this compare, contrast, real, ideal. And I'm going through and I'm looking through kind of some checklist things like, well, what is the ski performance and what is the timing and what is the, pressure control relative to the edge and where is the magnitude, whatever my check-in process is relative to that task. In other words, the first thing I do is I go to the ideal, and then I kind of back in, I look at their performance and find their cause and effect, and then I figure out what the gap is, and that's their prescription. And then it is so nonlinear. And I think we have to do the same thing for our clinic leading. And I'm saying that's my inner process. Now, how I present information can have whatever structure somebody needs it to be. But my inner process when I'm clinic leading is kind of organic like that and synthesized as well. In other words, I'm watching them skiing. I'm trying to get a feel for where their strength is and where some skills maybe, or some fundamentals, where some opportunity is in learning about some fundamentals, or timing of the fundamentals, or importance of the fundamentals within a phase. And then I immediately go to a task. It just pops into my head because that's the tangible part of it. And then I back into my learning outcome. It's like, okay, well, I've got this task, but specifically, how am I going to use this task? What is it? What is it about this task that's going to bring this skill or these two skills together for me? And what quality do they want them to take away that maybe they don't understand now? That's the duration, intensity, rate, timing in my mind, as well as what phase of the turn. And that's kind of what the process we walked through tonight. So if a process like that works for you, or whatever kind of synergistic way that helps you come to your learning outcome, and even though we state the learning outcome to the group up front, it might not be the first thing that we think of. We may have to back into it.
Yeah. I get a lot of that, and I get it. I get it. I just have trouble stating it simply enough for
Okay.
a learning outcome. I've got
Okay.
tasks that I want to do, and I just want to say, just shape your turn better. Just do that. And that is not a good learning outcome. We need to be able to understand that better, and what exactly that means, from going from my head to my mouth. I need to clean that up.
So go back to some qualities or qualifications. In other words, it needs to be observable and measurable.
Right. Okay.
So just shape your turn. How observable and measurable is it? Just shape the top part of your turn. Just shape the top of your turn before you get to the fall line. Just shape the top of your turn before you get to the fall line by bringing your two skills, right?
That works.
Just keep working it over into your brain until you can see it and measure it, and it has the two skills that you're trying to develop, at least for this group that we're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, already that was way more descriptive.
Okay. Yeah, and then as a result, it should be pretty simple and pretty laser focused. If it's observable, and you can see it, and they can see it, and it has the two skills that you want to develop.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's definitely something I want to practice a lot this year, and just I want to volunteer for everything and just be thrown out there as much as possible,
Perfect. Perfect.
especially
So
leading.
figure out how to make that happen. Yeah, I don't know what this year's going to look like yet. I just wrote to Rob today, so we'll see if we
Right,
can
yeah.
start getting a grasp of it. All right. Well, listen, good session tonight. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for doing all of these.